How much can the human body change after 100 runs? This is the question I set out to answer at the beginning of March last year, and one I hope to answer for all of you in this video. But equally as important, how did I go from despising cardio to running 2 half marathons in the span of 2 weeks? Well, let me tell you. You see, for most of my life, like most people, I despise running. It's hard, you feel miserable while you do it, and as someone who already struggles to put on weight, I saw no reason to make my life more difficult and make achieving my dream physique that much harder. But what really changed my mind on running was that quote from Socrates, which goes, "It's a shame for a man to grow old and not see the beauty and strength of which his body is capable." I knew that long distance running like the marathon and Ironman required a level of mental resilience that I just didn't have yet, but wanted to work towards. So in the March of this year, I decided I would stop making excuses and start putting in the work. And as you can imagine, things started off pretty rough. So after that first run, as expected, I felt pretty damn slow. And my only real goals were to A, run a faster mile time, and B, make running a mile not feel like eternity. And even though I hadn't done any research up to that point, I knew that the only way to fix this was to run longer distances and just run more in general. So the subsequent runs, I tried to up the mileage a little bit, trying to run 2, 3, and coming to a peak of 4 miles over the course of March. And before this challenge, I'd only run maybe a mile or 2 at most. So to run 4 consecutive miles, even if they were extremely slow miles, felt really good. It felt like a major step forward. I look like a freaking idiot out here filming myself while running, but you realize no one really cares what you're doing as long as you're not in their way. April was kind of the same as March. I did 13 runs total, working my way up to 4 miles again, with no real plan in mind, just kind of running as consistently as I could. But the cool thing was I took a minute off my average mile for that 4-mile run, so we were still seeing progress. And I started doing speed work this month. Oh my God, I did not plan that well. Which did not start off well. The first set I hit 6:46 pace, which you might think sounds decent, but the drop off was pretty bad in the following sets. Up until May, I was on and off traveling, so it felt hard to find consistency. But after that, I decided it was time to lock in. I found a 12-week half marathon training plan and decided that I wanted to start training to be in half marathon shape. So over the next 17 runs, I worked my way up to running a 7-miler, which was, again, a huge bout of progress. I also started running on the trail, which I highly recommend, because up to this point I was just running in my neighborhood and things were starting to get kind of boring. But let me say, the trail is anything but boring, especially considering the number of times I've run into the local wildlife. It's so hot. June and July were not great for me. Over the last 60 days, I ran some 16 runs, and even though I hit an 8-miler, and I think I walked more of that than I ran, I kind of burnt out after the first couple miles and had to walk the rest of it to just get the miles in. Almost all of my longer runs felt this way. I felt like I could only run the first couple miles and then had to walk the rest. And I think this burnout on all these runs was just caused by a combination of A, running too fast, which is the common beginner runner mistake, and B, just the lack of consistency. That's the most important thing when you're trying to improve as a runner, or improve at anything for that matter, is to be consistent. And it can be quite demotivating, as I felt these last couple months, when you're not able to do that. But the one highlight of this month was that I ran an 8-minute all-out mile, and that just showed me how much I had changed in these last few months. But luckily, August was better. I started to find some consistency with my running now that I got used to my new schedule with work. And I got some total 23 runs in the month of August. And honestly, I fell off the training plan in July. I thought to myself that I could just hop back on where I left off, but Instead, I chat GPT'd a new training plan and started following that off from basically the longest long run that I had done so far. I just started at that week. And this is kind of where things started to turn around. I had the whole zone 2 revelation that in order to run faster and longer, that you would have to first run slow, run a lot slower than you would think. In fact, at some points, you might feel like you're basically just walking. That's how slow you have to run starting off. But these slow recovery zone 2 runs in combination with actually well-utilized speed work, which was more like 400 meter and 800 meter repeats, both of those in combination really helped me improve my pace and my ability to run for longer on my long runs. In September, I officially signed up for my first half marathon.
All right, we're officially signed up. Let's go.
The Invesco QQQ half marathon. It's a huge race, and it's cool too because a couple of my coworkers are also running it, so that would be a lot of fun. Also, this month has been really cool. I worked my way up to running a 10-miler, which is honestly not far off from the real thing. It's only 3.1 miles off full distance that I need to run in November. So we're 75% of the way there, if not more. Unfortunately, as my progress was going great and things were looking up, October hit and I kind of fell off again. In October, my knee kind of started hurting again, which is not an issue that was new to me. It's something that I'd faced before I started the challenge, but up to this point, I'd been fine. So I attributed it to just overworking my knee from running. So I took some time off because I just wanted to be careful. But what's weird is towards the end of the month, I just started running a little bit more and more again. And even though my knee pain hadn't gotten worse, after I started running again, if anything, it got slightly better. So I think I just felt like I wasted the whole month of October just uncertain of what was causing this pain. But in a weird way, this knee issue represented a bigger life lesson for me. I mean, the thing I love about running is that it's so simple at its core, you know? You just go out there, and even if you run without a plan, with consistency and with time, you will get better. There's not much more to it. I mean, obviously, if you follow a plan, you'll probably see better results, but even if you don't do that, even if you just put in the time every day for a month or a year, you will see progress. But even this simple habit is prone to distraction when your mind gets soft. I mean, there are definitely scenarios in which you get a niggle or you actually have an injury and you should take time off. But after a couple of days, I think I knew that running wasn't the issue. But you take a couple of days off, then it gets harder to get back in, and then you take a week off and you start thinking about how much progress you've lost, you start developing new habits, and it just becomes harder and harder to get back into that consistent, easy habit that you had going for you over the last couple months. And so this was just a huge lesson to me on how easy it is for the mind to go soft and the importance of putting the pressure on yourself to keep going, because if you don't, no one else will, right? Anyway, in November, I found my consistency again. I mean, the Thanksgiving Day half was looming over my shoulder, and because of that, I started to find extreme consistency again. Running became one of my top priorities. I think I ran some 20 runs over this month before the half. I also hit a 12-miler, which is, just 1 mile off from where I need to be in a couple weeks. So things were looking good. I was improving at a good rate. I don't think I was improving as fast as I wanted to. I think this is where comparison really started to get the worst of me. Most of my friends had told me that their half marathon goal for their first half was to run a sub 2-hour half marathon, which was a little slower than 9 minutes a mile for the 13.1 miles. And I was a bit off of this in my training, so I knew this was just going to be extremely difficult to hit, but at the rate of my progress, I knew there was a chance. And as the weeks went on, I felt like that chance was growing. So things started to become a little dangerous because I set those expectations in the back of my head. And before I knew it, Thanksgiving Day was here. I arrived an hour early, as every anxious new runner does for their first race. And that thought that I could run a sub 2, as ambitious and out of my scope as it was really cemented in my head. I really thought to myself, sub 2 or bust, as they say. But unfortunately, I just wasn't ready. I hit a decent pace for the first 6 miles, but by mile 10, I was completely burnt out. I had run too fast, and it was an extremely hilly course.
Not quite the time I wanted, but that might be the hardest thing I've ever done.
You finished.
And still a huge milestone for me.
But it was crazy because I realized that this wasn't even like really my goal. This was just me comparing myself to others. And I finished that half marathon in a time that was still a huge improvement, and that was still a crazy amount of progress for me. The lesson here was that comparison is a thief of joy. My buddy who runs once every 2 weeks, who did run cross country in high school, ran a sub 2 with barely any training, and that really pissed me off. But I was happy for him, but also the competitive bone in my body was like, bro, I trained so much harder and I did, a lot worse than he did. So anyway, I was too stubborn about not hitting sub 2. So I actually signed up for another half marathon 2 weeks after this one had happened. So in early December, I ran a half marathon again, which was a flat course. And again, I went for sub 2. And again, even though I made major progress and cut 4 minutes off my half marathon time from the half I ran 2 weeks prior, I still didn't hit sub 2.
Burnt out at mile 10. Yet again.
But I took something from this double failure, and it's the reason that I'm posting this, which was that they weren't failures at all. In the pursuit of this goal, which was completely unrealistic if I'm being honest, I still saw myself making massive progress during these 100 days. When I first started this challenge, I could barely run a mile in 11 minutes. But I just ran 13.1 in a faster pace twice. I mean, that's pretty awesome. And it's not like this is the last day I'll be running. As many others have said, the only true failure is when you miss your goal and then stop trying. So even though this isn't the end of my running journey by any means, I wanted to end this video on a high. And I thought, what better way to do that than to take it back to where it all started.
An all-out 1 miler. Although, the first time I did this, I did it because I could only run 1 mile, and me running at all was all out. But today, we're gonna actually turn the gears on. There are multiple gears today. Let's get it. Oh my God. It's quite possibly one of the stupidest things I ever have done in my life. Coming back from not running for a week and going all out. Final run. But it didn't go that bad. And I know for a lot of others, the speed isn't that impressive. I ran a 8-minute mile back in June, so running a 7:44 now isn't that crazy for myself either. But frankly, that's not the point. The point is that I ran this mile with so much more confidence and a level of competence that I didn't have when I ran back in March. And so I want to end this video coming back to that Socrates quote. We all don't get to decide where we start. And frankly, it doesn't matter where we start. What does matter is deciding to put in the work every day to get just a little bit better. And by doing so, you might surprise yourself at how much you can change. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. Thanks for watching. Now get off the internet.